Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from First Aid Kit, titled Stay Gold. So okay, when I reviewed Sharon Van Etten's pretty damn solid album, Are We There, a few weeks back, I made references to the acoustic musical genre I cheekily branded white girls with acoustic guitars, and how while there are more acts in this vein than I like in comparison to some of their male counterparts, I couldn't say I was a huge fan of the genre. I wasn't saying that you couldn't make good music with just a girl and an acoustic guitar, but that sort of basic minimalist setup requires every single element to be on point, otherwise you're gonna run into distractions, there're gonna be problems, because everything will be focused on that. You slip up there, it becomes all the more evident. So okay, what happens when you get two white girls with acoustic guitars put together? Well, you get First Aid Kit, a Swedish country folk duo of two sisters that started on YouTube and was first discovered through a coincidental connection to one of the members of The Knife. After a cover of theirs of the Fleet Foxes song went semi-viral, the duo began to release albums, starting in 2010 with The Big Black and Blue. And while I was struck by some of the intriguing songwriting that showed flavor beyond their years, it was an album that did suffer from some amateurish demo-like production and a fair number of rough edges. Now, their second record, Alliance Roar, was much stronger, with richer and more diverse production that leaned more towards country, and some of their best songwriting to date. This was a duo with serious melodic chops, and when fused with wryly clever songwriting and measured delivery, it was enough to set First Aid Kit apart from the crowd and got me intrigued enough to check out their newest album, Stay Gold. And honestly, as good of songwriters as they were still just an acoustic duo, and I wasn't sure how their signing to a major label would end up turning out for the band. So was I just concerned for nothing? Well, for the most part I completely was, because First Aid Kit delivered a pretty damn great album with Stay Gold that might be one of the most cohesive and mature works to date. And while there is some trademarks of modern folk production that show up on this record, for good or for ill, First Aid Kit still managed to bring a lot of self-awareness, cleverness, and accessibility to their usual formula that I really did like, and I'm definitely going to recommend it. So okay, let's start with the obvious positives you all know. The biggest selling point of First Aid Kit has always been the two sisters Johanna and Clara, and they've got a gift for natural harmony and counterbalance between each other that's beautifully organic and yet still accentuates the uniqueness of both of their voices. Both of them have a lot of energy and texture in their delivery, and they've got the emotional range to easily convey the tricky and very subtle balance that is required in some of these tracks. And at the base of this album, like their best, are the well-structured and very interesting acoustic melodic compositions. They make their songs very distinctive and very capable of drama, as well as a strong pop sensibility. They got the best of both worlds here. And it'd be hard to argue that the soaring moments when they sing together, they're just incredibly powerful. They're that good. Now, the areas where the biggest changes come in, and they come into the instrumentation, with a much thicker and heavier, more rich ensemble, backing them up and adding a richer tapestry of sounds to the mix. And you know what? I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit exasperating for me as a country music fan to see them move more towards folk than country. Although acoustic numbers like Master Pretender, Cedar Lane, and Heaven Knows do feature enough steel guitar to really show some of that connection. But you know what? To be fair, it's not like some of the strings, occasional organ, heavier percussion, and some of the woodwinds, it's not like they're unwelcome, because when they actually step up to support the melodies, you get some of the best moments on this album. The strings melody of My Silver Moonlight, the graceful dramatic swell of the title track, the echoing minimalism of Shattered and Hollow, the rollicking chipper edge of Waitress Song, the cymbal crescendos on Fleeting One that's just gorgeous, and the rich bouncy texture of Heaven Knows. There are so many great moments, and the instrumentation never feels cluttered or superfluous, actually very clean. Now that said, we do run into my common gripe with modern folk instrumentation and production, which is the overuse of reverb and echo. But to be fair, it's not bad on this album, as both girls have strong enough presence behind the microphone to support that booming production, and the melodies are always given prominence in the mix. Now that said, there are moments where I do wish that a little bit more of the intimate atmosphere with a little bit less reverb and a little bit more rough texture had been preserved, but honestly, that's nitpicking when the melodies are this good. But of course, it's me here, so let's dig into the songwriting and themes. And I'll say right out of the bat that despite First Aid Kit's gift for cadence and natural melody in their songwriting, they do occasionally run into some situations where they try to cram too many words into the lyrics and the poetic flow becomes a little bit choppy. And while they do paint some impressive pictures of loneliness and standing alone against an uncaring world, I'd argue that the level of some of their lyrical depth never quite reaches some of the extreme heights that you found on Lion's Roar with songs like Emmy Lou. Now that said, unlike that album, First Aid Kit have a much tighter grasp on their themes and motifs, and do a really solid job exploring as many facets of them as they possibly can. The title Stay Gold, which always reminds me of S.E. Hinton's short novel The Outsiders, is also the primary question of the record. Can First Aid Kit maintain their optimism and hope against a world that would seek to push them down and hold them back in its depressing cynicism? Now, okay, the obvious answer here is yes, and First Aid Kit are a natural fit for the songs where youthful exuberance and optimism triumphs over cynicism, whether it be in relationships or in their actual professional careers. But to the duo's credit, they are willing to show a lot of vulnerability in both tone and nuance. My Silver Lining makes it very clear that the duo is just gritting their teeth to continue to go forward, and the title track reveals the uncertainty behind that choice, and whether or not time will make the decision ending up for them. And what helps here is that there's a real acknowledgement that this sort of choice for them will be quite painful potentially, but as they say, they'd rather be shattered than be hollow. Now that love itself eventually does take shape on later tracks into the figure of some nebulous guy in question, either one long departed and master pretender, or absorbed in his own ego and heaven knows, or just a breakup and weary resignation that just was not meant to be on a long time ago. But First Aid Kit is canny enough here to keep their description abstract enough to not directly imply romance or suggest the lyrics as anything more than self-aware commentary about themselves and their own within their lives. In fact, the moments where they seem to go for slightly more concrete details is where this album feels a little bit weaker, honestly, as they don't quite feel as fleshed out as they were on previous albums. And yet, strangely, as much as I love the soaring, more abstract moments, it does make the album as a whole feel a little bit flighty and lacking in some of the heavier drama or those truly somber emotional moments beyond Shattered and Hollow and the excellent closing song A Long Time Ago, which is kind of odd considering this album does have some of First Aid Kit's more mature lyrics to date. I think some of it just comes down to the presentation here. But in the end, I really do like this album, but I'm not quite sure if I love it. First Aid Kit clearly has tons of talent in their songwriting, delivery, and melodic composition, but I'm not quite sure this album truly blows my mind. I do like the increased attention to making that bigger sound, which is a natural fit for their more expressive vocals, but I do feel the songwriting could have afforded a little bit more detail in order to match the nuance. Many of the pictures they paint are very strong and very vivid. I'm just not quite swept up in the story as much as I want to be. But at the same time, I can recognize serious chops when I hear them, and that knocks this album up to an 8 out of 10 and definitely a recommendation for me. Folks, if you're looking for country-inspired folk with a modern sensibility, beautiful vocals, and two very nuanced songwriters behind it, you all need to check out Stay Gold by First Aid Kit. So go check them out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. On July 12th, I'm going to be reviewing an album from 2013 on your request, whether it's going to be a re-review of an album that I've already covered or just an album from that year that I missed and you want me to talk about anyway. So put in your comments some suggestions, and the one that gets the most suggestions over the past couple of videos is going to be the one I'm going to cover. So until then, if there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or there's any albums coming out this year that you want me to cover, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. So until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.